Hello, this is Chaplain Paul, and I'm making this video in support of House Bill 2653. That's crafted by Representative Wynn in the House. And I wanted to make this video to show support for that bill and explain why I support it. I was supposed to testify at the Health and Human Services Committee hearing on Valentine's Day, and I was sick with the flu, so I couldn't make that. And so I decided to just see about making this video in support of House Bill 2653. All right, so this bill would require, one of the provisions of this bill would require cameras in the rooms of long-term care patients. Why is this important? Because sexual abuse is the most underreported form of abuse for a few reasons. One is it's very hard to prove. Number two, that's Sonny, that's running. Uh, he heard something. Uh, Number two, uh, the patients, if they have uh, mental deficit, cognitive deficit, uh, other deficits can be used against them if they say that they were sexually abused. The facility is more apt to cover it up. Sometimes facilities will even send the patient to another facility so they don't have to deal with it. So it's a very difficult to prove sexual um, abuse in long-term care. What's the solution? You have to have cameras. If you have cameras, the staff is going to think twice. There's cameras in daycare. Why? To make sure the children are being cared for properly. How is it that there's not cameras in the rooms of long-term care patients to make sure they're being cared for properly? If you look up the statistics for uh, wrongful death, sexual and physical abuse, neglect, mistreatment um, of patients, uh, the numbers are pretty high. And you have to understand that not all the complaints are even filed. Uh, I've witnessed, I've talked to patients that were manhandled by staff, which can be very painful. Patients that are paralyzed from the waist down, and they come in to change the patient, and they're manhandling the patient, which could be very painful. Uh, there is no accountability for that. The patient could complain all day long, and I even have filed on behalf of patients with the long-term care licensing department. I've contacted Adult Protective Services, and I've contacted the Arizona Long-Term Care Ombudsman, and very little is resolved. As a matter of fact, nothing was resolved. They come in, they do an investigation, and well, uh, Arizona Long-Term Care, the Ombudsman and Adult Protective Services will come in and do an investigation, and they'll write a report, and that report goes over to the Arizona Long-Term Care Licensing Department. At which point, if there's not a demand for an on-site investigation, it's pretty much shuffled away. Now, if they do come out and they do an investigation, usually nothing is resolved because they err on the side of the facility, and allegations can be very, very tricky. And the way that the facility defends themselves is say, well, that person has cognitive issues. That person is angry and is doing this out of spite. So there's no hardcore evidence of being molested in a facility. There really isn't, unless the patient becomes pregnant or there's, you know, evidence of black eyes and beating. Is very difficult to prove that a patient was sexually assaulted, all right, or even physically. Um, that's just the way. Okay, so what's the deal? Well, the industry will say, well, there's privacy issues. No, it's not privacy issues because patients don't have any rights in these facilities if they're all alone. They don't have any rights. So putting a camera above the bed is not going to take away their privacy to such a degree that it's going to be relevant, because it's not, because there's other rights that are being violated in these facilities. Constitutional rights, civil rights, patients' rights, and human rights are being violated. So putting a camera up on the ceiling over the patient's bed to ensure that the patient's being cared for properly, being changed in a timely manner, not being talked to rudely, not being lied to, not being mistreated, neglected, abused, the the positive effect outweighs the negative. Here's a saying that I thought of. I'd rather have a camera over my bed than a tombstone over my head. Okay, again, I'd rather have a camera over my bed to ensure that a dementia patient or a roommate that has mental issues doesn't get out of bed in the middle of the night and beat me to death, which is happening in these facilities. Look, I mean, come on. Let's get real here, okay? Look, you see this? See that? See what it says? Front page. This whole system is has failed. This whole system has failed. Graphic stories of patients that were beaten to death by other patients, graphic stories of patients that were sexually abused by staff and other patients. Front page. Front page. Graphic stories. The Arizona Republic did a whole series of stories on patients that are being abused, neglected, and mistreated, beaten to death. Okay? If we can't protect these people, if we can't protect their safety and well-being in a long-term care facility, then what does that say about us as society? It says we don't give a damn. It says we're placing money and profits over the safety and well-being of the patients. That's what it's saying. Okay, and it's got to stop. I Patients raped and beaten to death, and we're arguing over whether it's a violation of the patient's privacy rights to have a camera in the room. Again, when you have patients that are being beaten and raped in the bed by staff and other patients, then a camera in the room overrides that, because the camera over the bed is going to save lives. The camera over the bed is going to ensure that the staff does their job. The camera over the bed is going to hold staff accountable. The camera over the bed is going to have the evidence that's needed, so when state comes in and does their investigation, that they have that video as evidence, hardcore evidence that's irreputable, okay, evidence that can be used in a court of law and put these people in jail, put the staff in jail, put the owners in jail, because their job is to create an environment of rest and good care and love and compassion and kindness and dignity, and not create an environment that mirrors a prison or a zoo. And that's what we have now. So if we have a system, again, here it is again, okay? This whole system has failed. So it's time for action. What is the action? Well, to begin with, you put cameras above the bed. You put cameras above the bed, and you educate the public that when they become a patient in these facilities, that they get an Alexa app, video, some sort of video device that's voice activated, and put it right by the bed. That can be voice activated by your phone, by the patient. If the patient's paralyzed, they could activate it by speech. The family can activate it by their phone. 24 hours a day, they can monitor their loved one. That's critical for ensuring the safety and well-being of the patients. So again, 2653 is a start in the right direction. The industry is going to say that it violates privacy. Again, I don't mean to be a broken record, but the industry, they're not worried about our privacy, because they're violating our constitutional rights, our civil rights, our patients' rights, and our human rights every single day. So they're not worried about our privacy. They're worried about their privacy. They want to have a green light to do whatever they want and not run the risk of getting fined or shut down or put in prison. And the way that they ensure their uh, their gravy train, or whatever you want to call it, Their cash flow is to make sure that cameras aren't in the rooms. Other states have cameras in the rooms. Other states are doing this. So if other states are doing it, let's Arizona needs to get on the ball and uh, uh, provide the necessary security and protections that these people not only need, okay, but have a constitutional right to have. That's a fact. The Ninth Amendment of the Constitution was written by the founding fathers, added to the Constitution to protect rights that weren't written in the Constitution, such as the right to get married. We have the right to be married. It's not in the Constitution. We have the right to have children. It's not in the Constitution. We have the right to grow our own food. It's not in the Constitution. Why? Because if they had to sit there and write every single right that we have, it would be what? It would be a book this big. So they had to have a mechanism in place to protect rights that weren't written in the Constitution. Basic human rights do not need to be in the Constitution. Being treated humanely with dignity, kindness, compassion, and love, and fairness at an affordable price, being treated properly, is a constitutional right. It is a human right. It is a patient's right. It is a civil right. And it needs to be protected. How do you protect it? You put cameras in the rooms. That's a start. And you have it set up where the cameras have a changeable password. Okay, so let's say a member of my family becomes a patient in the facility. I'm given the access to that room's camera where I go and I create an account and I create a password that is just mine. And this way, my family can have access to that camera 24 hours a day, and whatever agency, okay, off site that collects that data and holds it for evidence, like the Arizona Long Term Care Licensing Department or a separate entity, DES, some entity that can collect that data and keep it for evidence. If these people have to go to court, uh, the only accessibility is through the patient's family member for the time that they're there. When the patient goes home, or if the patient passes away or goes to another facility, then that account is is done. The data is still saved, but the family can no longer have access to that camera. The next patient that comes in, their family member creates a password that has access to that camera, and so on and so on and so on. That's how you do that. That's how that issue is resolved. Okay, and this way that data is permanently saved. So now, if a patient is waiting 2 hours to be changed, and the CNA comes in and says, "I'll be back in 15 minutes to change you," and the CNA doesn't come back for 2 hours, and we get that on camera, then that should be a violation of that facility. Not only was the CNA lying, but it was undue uh, stress and discomfort and torture for that patient. To be told you're going to be changed in 15 minutes and wait 2 more hours. This is what I've witnessed. I've had patients call me that have gone through this, waiting hours to be changed, and the CNA or somebody pops their head in and says, "I'll be back in 10 or 15 minutes," and they wait 2 more hours. That's got to stop. Patients being lied to, patients being treated very rudely, patients being manhandled, patients being assaulted, patients being sexually abused has got to stop. Again, when we go into these facilities, it's a place of rest. It is a place to get medical care, proper medical care at an affordable price. It is a place where we could be at peace knowing that we're safe. That's not the case. It's the opposite. Patients have to look at every medication that they're given to make sure there's not a mistake. Patients have to sit there and make sure that they're not given the wrong medication or medication too close together. They got to make sure they're getting the right treatment. They have to make sure that what they're being told is truthful and accurate. So you're living in a constant state of fear and stress, which wreaks havoc on your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual health, your emotional health, and then the only remedy is psych meds and antidepressants, which in most cases do more harm than good. We've created an environment of a living hell on wheels with little or no protections. So again, this is a start. I strongly support House Bill 2653. I thank Representative Wynn for his courage and his leadership in placing service above self and reaching out and helping others for the glory of God. I wish you all very well, and I pray that you will fight day and night to improve the safety and quality of care for these poor people, because at the end of the day, we're next in line. Okay, sooner or later, we're hitting those beds. Sooner or later, someone we love is going to hit those beds. We want to make sure it's a place of peace, love, compassion, kindness, and love. Remember, Jesus loves you, and so do I.